Welcome, brothers and sisters. Today I go through the last sections of paper 102. That was all about the foundations of religious faith. The last sections I will read to you is all about the supremacy of purposive potential and the certitude of the divine, and as last, the evidence of religion. All right, let's start because it's a long reading, probably 40 minutes, if not a bit longer. So let us start and we'll go to screen share so all can read along with me. Section 5, the supremacy of purposive potential. Although the establishment of the fact of belief is not equivalent to establishing the fact of that which is believed, nevertheless, the evolutionary progression of simple life to the status of personality does demonstrate the fact of the existence of the potential of personality to start with, and in the time universes, potential is always supreme over the actual. In the evolving cosmos, the potential is what is to be. And what is to be is the unfolding of the purposive mandates of deity. This supreme purposive supremacy is shown in the evolution of mind ideation when primitive animal fear is transmuted into the constantly deepening reverence for God and into increasing awe of the universe. Primitive man had more religious fear than faith, and the supremacy of spirit potentials over mind actuals is demonstrated when this craven fear is translated into living faith in spiritual realities. You can psychologize evolutionary religion, but not the personal experience religion of spiritual origin. Human morality may recognize values, but only religion can conserve, exalt, and spiritualize such values. But notwithstanding such actions, religion is something more than emotionalized morality. Religion is to morality as love is to duty, servitude as essence is to substance. Morality discloses an almighty controller, a deity to be served. Religion discloses an all-loving Father, a God to be worshipped and loved. And again, this is because the spiritual potentiality of religion is dominant over the duty actuality of the morality of evolution. Section 6, the certainty of religious faith. The philosophic elimination of religious fear and the steady progress of science and add greatly to the mortality of false gods. And even though these casualties of man-made deities may momentarily befog the spiritual vision, they eventually destroy that ignorance and superstition which so long obscured the living God of eternal love. The relation between the creature and the Creator is a living experience, a dynamic religious faith, which is not subject to precise definition. To isolate part of life and call it religion is to disintegrate life and to distort religion. And this is just why the God of worship claims all allegiance or none. The gods of primitive men may have been no more than shadows of themselves. The living God is the divine light whose interruptions constitute the creation shadows of all space. The religionist of philosophic attainment has faith in a personal God of personal salvation, something more than a reality, a value of level of achievement, an exalted process, a transmutation, the ultimate of time, space, an idealization, the personalization of energy, the entity of gravity, a human projection, the idealization of self, nature's upthrust, the inclination to goodness, the forward impulse of evolution, or a sublime hypothesis. The religionist has faith in a God of love. Love is the essence of religion and the wellspring of superior civilization. Faith transforms the philosophic God of probability into the saving God of certainty. In the personal religious experience, skepticism may challenge the theories of theology, but confidence in the dependability of personal experience affirms the truth of that belief which has grown into faith. Convictions about God may be arrived at through wise reasoning, but the individual becomes God knowing only by faith through personal experience in much that pertains to life. Probability must be reckoned with, but when contacting with cosmic reality, certainty may be experienced when such meanings and values are approached by living faith. The God knowing soul dares to say, I know, even when this knowledge of God is questioned by the unbeliever who denies such certitude because it is not wholly supported by intellectual logic. To every such doubter, the believer only replies, how do you know that I do not know? Though reason can always question faith, faith can always supplement both reason and logic. Reason creates the probability which faith can transform into a moral certainty, even a spiritual experience. God is the first truth and the last fact. Therefore does all truth take origin in Him, while all facts exist relative to Him. God is absolute truth. As truth, one may know God, but to understand, to explain God, one must explore the fact of the universe of universes, the vast gulf between the experience of the truth of God and ignorance as to the fact of God can be bridged only by living faith. Reason alone cannot achieve harmony between infinite truth and universal fact. Belief may not be able to resist doubt and withstand fear, but faith is always triumphant over doubting. For faith is both positive and living. The positive always has the advantage over the negative, truth over error, experience over theory, spiritual realities over the isolated facts of time and space. The convincing evidence of this spiritual certainty consists in the social fruits of the Spirit, which such believers, faithers, yield as a result of this genuine spiritual experience. Jesus said, "If you love your fellows as I have loved you, then shall all men know that you are my disciples." The science, God is a possibility. To science, God is a possibility. To psychology, a desirability. To philosophy, a probability. To religion, a certainty, an actuality of religious experience. Reason demands that a philosophy which cannot find the God of probability should be very respectful of that religious faith which can and does find the God of certitude. Neither should science discount religious experience on grounds of credulity, not so long as it persists in the assumption that man's intellectual and philosophic endowments emerged from increasingly lesser intelligences. The further back they go, finally taking origin in primitive life, which was utterly devoid of all thinking and feeling. The facts of evolution must not be arrayed against the truth of the reality of the certainty of the spiritual experience, of the religious living, of the God knowing mortal. Intelligent men should cease to reason like children and should attempt to use the consistent logic of adulthood, logic which tolerates the concept of truth alongside the observation of fact. Scientific materialism has gone bankrupt when it persists in the face of each recurring universe phenomenon, in refunding its current objections by revering what is admittedly higher back into that which is admittedly lower. Consistency demands the recognition of the activities of a purposive creator. Organic evolution is a fact. Purposive or progressive evolution is a truth which makes consistent the otherwise contradictory phenomena of the ever-ascending achievements of evolution. The higher any scientist progresses in his chosen science, the more will he abandon the theories of materialistic fact in favor of the cosmic truth of the dominance of the supreme mind. Materialism cheapens human life. The gospel of Jesus tremendously announces and supernally exalts every mortal. Mortal existence must be visualized as consisting in the intriguing and fascinating experience of the realization of reality, of the meeting of the human upreach and the divine and saving downreach. Section 7. The certitude of the divine. The universal Father, being self-existent, is also self-explanatory. He actually lives in every rational mortal. But you cannot be sure about God unless you know Him. Sonship is the only experience which makes fatherhood certain. The universe is everywhere undergoing change. A changing universe is a dependent universe. Such a creation cannot be either final or absolute. A finite universe is wholly dependent on the ultimate and the absolute. The universe and God are not identical. One is cause, the other effect. The cause is absolute, infinite, eternal, and changeless. The effect time, space, and transcendental, but ever changing, always growing. God is the one and only self-caused fact in the universe. He is the secret of the order, plan, and purpose of the whole creation of things and beings. The everywhere changing universe is regulated and stabilized by absolutely unchanging laws, the habits of an unchanging God. The fact of God, the divine law, is changeless. The truth of God, his relation to the universe, is a relative revelation, which is ever adaptable to the constantly evolving universe. Those who would invent a religion without God are like those who would gather fruit without trees, have children without parents. You cannot have effects without causes. Only the I am is causeless. The fact of religious experience implies God, and such a God of personal experience must be a personal deity. You cannot pray to a chemical formula, supplicate a mathematical equation, worship a hypothesis, confide in a postulate, commune with a process, serve an abstraction, or hold loving fellowship with a law. True, many apparently religious traits can grow out of non-religious roots. Man can intellectually deny God and yet be morally good, loyal, filial, honest, and even idealistic. Man may graft many purely humanistic branches onto his basic spiritual nature and thus apparently prove his contentions in behalf of a godless religion. But such an experience is devoid of survival values, God knowingness, and God ascension. In such a mortal experience, only social fruits are forthcoming, not spiritual. The graft determines the nature of the fruit, notwithstanding that the living sustenance is drawn from the roots of original divine endowment of both mind and spirit. The intellectual earmark of religion is certainty. The philosophical characteristic is consistency, and the social fruits are love and service. The God-knowing individual is not one who is blind to the difficulties or unmindful of the obstacles which stand in the way of finding God in the maze of superstition, tradition, and materialistic tendencies of modern times. He has encountered all these deterrents and triumphed over them, surmounted them by living faith, and attained the highlands of spiritual experience in spite of them. But it is true that many who are inwardly sure about God fear to assert such feelings of certainty because of the multiplicity and cleverness of those who assemble objections and magnify difficulties about believing in God. It requires no great depth of intellect to pick flaws, ask questions, or raise objections, but it does require brilliance of mind to answer these questions and solve these difficulties. Faith certainty is the greatest technique for dealing with all such superficial contentions. If science philosophy, or sociology dares to become dogmatic in contending with the prophets of true religion, then should God knowing men reply to such unwarranted dogmatism with that more far-seeing dogmatism of the certainty of personal spiritual experience. I know what I have experienced because I am a son of I am. If the personal experience of a faither is to be challenged by dogma, then this faith-born son of the experienceable Father may reply with that unchallengeable dogma, the statement of his actual sonship with the universal Father. Only an unqualified reality, an absolute, could dare consistently to be dogmatic. Those who assume to be dogmatic must, if consistent, sooner or later be driven into the arms of the absolute of energy, the universal of truth, and infinite of love. If the non-religious approaches to cosmic reality presume to challenge the certainty of faith on the grounds of its unproved status, then the spirit experiencer can likewise resort to the dogmatic challenge of the facts of science and the beliefs of philosophy on the grounds that they are likewise unproved. They are likewise experiences in the consciousness of the scientist or the philosopher. Of God, the most inescapable of all presences, the most real of all facts, the most living of all truths, the most loving of all friends, and the most divine of all values. We have the right to be the most certain of all universe experiences. And then section 8, the last section, the evidences of religion. Um, The highest evidence of the reality and efficacy of religion consists in the fact of human experience, namely that man, naturally fearful and suspicious, innately endowed with a strong instinct of self-preservation and craving survival after death, is willing fully to trust the deepest interests of his present and future to the keeping and direction of that power and person designated by his faith as God. That is the one central truth of all religion as to what that power or person requires of man in return for this watch care and final salvation. No two, no two religions agree. In fact, they all more or less disagree regarding the status of any religion in the evolutionary scale. It may be best be judged by its moral judgments and its ethical standards. The higher the type of any religion, the more it encourages and is encouraged by a constantly improving social morality and ethical culture. We cannot judge religion by the status of its accompanying civilization. We had better estimate the real nature of a civilization by the purity and nobility of its religion. Many of the world's most notable religious teachers have been virtually unlettered. The wisdom of the world is not necessary to an exercise of saving faith in eternal realities. The difference in the religions, of various ages is wholly dependent on the difference in man's comprehension of reality and on his differing recognition of moral values, ethical relationships, and spirit realities. Ethics is the external social or racial mirror which faithfully reflects the otherwise unobservable progress of internal spiritual and religious developments. Man has always thought of God in the terms of the best he knew, his deepest ideas and highest ideals. Even historic religion has always created its God conceptions out of its highest recognized values. Every intelligent creature gives the name of God to the best and highest thing he knows. Religion, when reduced to terms of reason and intellectual expression, has always dared to criticize civilization and evolutionary progress as judged by its own standards of ethical culture and moral progress. While personal religion precedes the evolution of human morals, it is regretfully recorded that institutional religion has invariably lagged behind the slowly changing mores of the human races. Organized religion has proved to be conservatively tardy. The prophets have usually led the people in religious development. The theologians have usually held them back. Religion, being a matter of inner or personal experience, can never develop very far in advance of the intellectual evolution of the races. But religion is never announced by an appeal to the so-called miraculous. The quest for miracles is a harking back to the primitive religions of magic. True religion has nothing to do with alleged miracles and never does. Revealed religion point to miracles as proof of authority. Religion is ever and always rooted and grounded in personal experience, and your highest religion, the life of Jesus, was just such a personal experience. Man, mortal man, seeking God and finding him to the fullness during one short life in the flesh. While in the same human experience there appeared God seeking man and finding him to the full satisfaction of the perfect soul of infinite supremacy. And that is religion, even the highest yet revealed in the universe of Nebadon, the earth life of Jesus of Nazareth. And with this said, I have come to the end of reading the last sections of paper 102. All the information in this paper has been presented to us by a Melchizedek of Nebadon. And I want to say thank you so much, Melchizedek of Nebadon, for giving us this valuable information so that we get a deeper understanding of the foundations of religious faith. Thank you so much for going through all this with me. I will remove this screen share and go to the last. I want to say thank you so much for listening and reading along with me. I wish you all a beautiful day filled with love, joy, and wisdom, and also service to our fellow brothers and sisters, just as Jesus has taught us to do so. God bless you, and I see you in the next live book reading, which will all about the beginning and the roots of marriage. The coming two papers, at least, were all about the existence of marriage, the roots of it, and how important marriage is in civilization, and that marriage is in actuality the foundation of civilization. So let us end this book reading by saying God bless you, and let us listen to a nice, beautiful